Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. We got a big one today. Obviously, Mac Jones is going to be laid low for a little bit with that ankle injury, high ankle sprain. Those can be 4 weeks. Those can be 6 weeks. Those can be 2 weeks. But we're probably looking at Halloween nearly as I can suss out. And I've had an ankle or two. No, I know I'm not an NFL quarterback. But we're going to dive into Mac's injury, the ramifications of a backup quarterback coming in, along with Pete Kendall. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk to Pete about matters of trust. Because when a quarterback, or really any player, is injured and he wants to be as good as he can be when he comes back, and the team is pushing to get him back out there as soon as possible, there's always that little tug of war. So we'll discuss that with Pete. We'll also discuss what he thinks of the Patriots' incline, as I see it, offensively over the last few weeks. They've improved. But there were some buckling plays by Mac Jones down the stretch. So was it one of his best performances as a Patriots quarterback? Well, one of his worst. We'll dive into that. And, of course, we'll have Phil Perry in as well, who delivered this outstanding rant on Early Edition. We're going to send you this, and then we're going to get right into it with Pete Kendall talking about what he sees about the Patriots' offensive inclinations since we last spoke to him.
Not to exonerate Mac Jones of every bad play that happens out there offensively for the Patriots, but when you run a wide zone play fake, having not run a single wide zone run to that point in the football game, there's a good chance the linebackers aren't going to bite on that play fake. Ted Johnson talked about it on the breakdown. That's exactly what happened. The linebackers did not react to the fake. Mac Jones spins around and throws to a lurking linebacker who he didn't, I'm sure based on how the play is drawn up, expect to be there. On the pick to Devontae Parker in the end zone down the field, Devontae Parker is looking at him as he's making calls at the line of scrimmage with his palms to the sky saying, I don't know what to do. And that's partly on Devontae Parker, but I also look at the coaching staff and say, this guy's not getting enough, because that's 2 weeks in a row now in the red zone on third down where Devontae Parker isn't picking up an audible. So it's not every mistake where we are going to be able to do this, but it's really hard to divorce the quarterback's play from the play calling and from the coaching. And it feels like right now, almost every mistake we look at, we can look at the coaching and the tendencies and how these things are being called and say, are they doing the right things here? If we were to sit here in March when we had an idea that this was going to be the setup, and we said, well, what's the worst case scenario for the Patriots?
He's hurt after week 3.
He's hurt after week 3, and he's probably got, the lowest quarterback rating in the league or something. That's never going to happen. And yet here we are. Yeah. And he has the lowest quarterback rating in football, and he's injured. He is not getting the support that he needs, in my opinion.
In comes Pete Kendall, longtime NFL lineman, the pride of Boston College in Weymouth, Massachusetts. What is your take on Phil's take?
Hard to quibble with it. I still think that Mac bears some of the responsibility, particularly on the Parker interception. I think if the guy's kind of throwing his palms up at you like, I don't know what to do, maybe that's not the guy to throw the ball to. Maybe that one goes into the fourth row of the end zone seats, and you live to fight another day. But clearly there are some issues offensively that still haven't been totally cleaned up. And if your quarterback's among the lowest rated passers in the league, coming off of a Pro Bowl season, it suggests there's still quite a bit of work to do.
When we talked after the first game, you did an excellent job breaking down, and actually prior to that too, some of the limitations that you had seen in the offense and just kind of the cogency of it. I kind of have seen improvement, Pete, week 1 to week 3, especially in week 2. And then we saw really another step taken with an explosive downfield passing game that they're trying to cultivate right now. So I'm looking at this as kind of, okay, arrows pointing up relative to where I thought the damn thing would be a month ago. What's your take as somebody who would be in and you're breaking down these games and you're spending a lot of time digesting it? Where do you think they are?
I agree with you that I think the arrow's pointing up. I thought they did a lot of good things on Sunday against Baltimore. It's unfortunately they turned the ball over too much, particularly in the second half, to give themselves a chance. The offense looks a lot like the offense I've been watching for the last 5-10 years, just as a fan. Obviously, we spent some time talking about the wide zone and maybe doing some new things in the run game. But as I watch their run game, it looks very similar to what I've watched like I say, the last 5-10 years. So you see a little bit of the wham scheme and the gap scheme, the man scheme, not as much zone blocking as was talked about in the preseason. And so if they've made big changes offensively, to my eye, that would have to have come in the passing game, because the running game looks pretty similar to what they've run in the past.
So the Patriots have stated that they want to be more explosive, and they're trying to attain that. When there are picks, when there's pressure on the quarterback, when he ends up getting whacked as a result of waiting for some of these things to uncover, is that just the nature of doing business, Pete? Or do you look at this as it's not really exactly what you've been in the past? I mean, I guess the easier way to ask this is, do you need to be a chunk throwing team in 2022? Because that's seemingly what the Patriots are saying. Look, we don't get enough chunk plays. We're doing it this year, come hell or high water.
I think you do have to emphasize making explosive plays. Not every play has to be an explosive play. Not every play can be an explosive play, but it's really hard to go the long, hard way, to have 10, 12, 14 play drives where you don't have an offside, you don't have a drop ball, you don't have a holding call. And so, yeah, I think you need to move the ball down the field in big chunks, because it's become a scoring league. It's much more about the offense and the defense in 2022. And so you have to take your chances. And sometimes some bad things come over that. You might have an interception. You might take a sack. But I do think the days of 3 yards in a cloud of dust, you're gonna run 12, 14 plays and punch it in are kind of behind us.
And I really don't hate the notion, and I don't hate that sometimes Mac goes up on the curb and runs over a mailbox or two, or sideswipes a stop sign. I mean, you have to do that to get better at it, no?
No, I think you're right. Again, I think you have to push the ball down the field. You have to do things that are going to get you 10, 12, 15 yards plus at a time. And whether that's scheming it up in the run game with a reverse or the jet sweep or something where you can get a chunk run, 10 plus yards, or in the passing game where you're 15 plus yards down the field, you're going to have to hold the ball a little bit. You're going to give guys a chance to get open, but also a chance to get home in the pass rush. But if the sum total of what you're doing is getting you down the field and putting points on the board, then that's what you have to do, and you have to live with some of the warts. Yep.
And of course, it's a results-oriented league too. So that's the thing. Its process is, okay, we're going to have some games where we might give the ball away but that's part of the process. But the result could end up being, as it was on Sunday, a loss as a result of, taking the bumpers off the sides of the lane. I want to pivot a little bit to away from the offense and a little more ephemeral stuff related to the team, which is, I think this is an absolutely critical juncture in Mac's career. He starts out 9-4. He wins the job. He's got Josh McDaniels as his offensive coordinator. He's the odds-on favorite to be the offensive rookie of the year. So the team closes 2021 on a 1-4 skid. They're 1-2 right now. And in those 8 games, Pete, since their bye, Mac has 12 picks. That includes the playoff game. And he's got 10 TDs since that bye. You take out the 50-10 win over Jacksonville, and yeah, you're not supposed to do that, but I'm doing it anyway. He had 3 touchdowns, no picks in that game. He's got 12 picks and 7 touchdowns. The team's 2-6 over that span. It's a fact that this is an unconventional setup. And it's absolutely impossible to argue that it's gone smoothly. So you've gone from McDaniels into an offseason. You didn't hire an offensive coordinator. You're kind of duct tape and glue with trying to get this together. And now, after 3 kind of discouraging games where Mac is probably feeling, okay, do I know what we're doing? Do they know what they're doing? He's now got an ankle injury that's going to sideline him. The team's going to want him back ASAP. And he's going to want to be out there when he's at his best so he can look his best. There are matters of trust for a player with an injury. From the outside, Pete, I'm looking at this as a critical time for a second-year quarterback, a first-round pick who's coming back from an injury. And when he does come back, he's going to be highly leveraged to show that he is back where he was and lug the Patriots to wherever they're going. What's your feeling as to the importance of this time in Mac's development and career?
So I'm not quite as convinced as you are that this is a critical time in Mac's career, just looking at the fact that he was a first round pick. They have 5 years worth of control. I think if this were a year from now and when he was in year 3 and when they have to start thinking about whether they're going to extend or exercise the 5th-year option, I think that's a little bit more of a critical time than right now, which isn't to minimize where they are right now. It's all important, but I think from Mac's perspective, from his agent's perspective, perhaps next year is a little bit more critical than this year. That being said, you always want to play well. You want to make the team start to have those conversations as soon as you can. But there's really nothing they can do based on the way the CBA set up. They can't do anything until next year anyhow.
Is there a matter of trust here that is involved for a player with an injury when there are always those competing interests, Pete?
There is, and not to be critical of any team's doctor, but I think the best advice that I could give Mac, and I'm sure he's gotten this from his agent, is get a second opinion, and if you have to have a surgery, have a third party do it. There's just too much potential for conflicts of interest if you keep it in house. And again, I'm not impugning anybody's integrity,
Sure.
but if you come to a point as a player and you don't feel like you're ready to go, but the doctor thinks you're ready to go, is that advice coming because the team doctor knows the team wants you to go, or the team doctor thinks you're really ready? You eliminate all of that when you have a third party handle it, where that doctor is strictly your doctor and with no other interest to serve. And you can't say that about a team doctor just by the very nature of the relationship.
And the timeline will be obviously of concern as well. We want you back out there as soon as possible. And I'm sure he wants that as a player, but there's a whole contingent of people around him who, for a young man, and you have a young man at Boston College right now, you played in the league. Your son will, quite possibly be in the NFL before too long. You were very involved in the Players Association and making sure that the rights of players were respected as a union guy. That is a dynamic, I think, that I'm referring to, where if the Patriots haven't put him in the best position necessarily in his second year already, they might have frittered away a little bit of the goodwill and trust.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. I think, from my perspective, I'm sure Mac is going to want to get out there and play as soon as he can. But he has to consider his long-term health. He can't put himself at further risk beyond the risk that everybody takes when they go play. So his agent, I'm almost certain, is telling him, we'll take as much time as it needs to heal. And when you're ready to go back, we'll know. And that's when you go back. And I don't know how they're going to operate down there from Bill's perspective. But of course, he's going to want his starting quarterback out there as soon as possible. That's just the nature of the game, the nature of the beast.
There's so much unspoken pressure, I would imagine, and spoken pressure. But even now, probably in 2022, unspoken pressure. Look, got to get you out there. You're our guy. And the player must feel that as well. But with spiraling contracts and the fact that you can be a $250 million player and have a $250 million contract is an immense amount on the line. And again, it's an ankle injury. It's not a neck. It's not a, something, thank God, that would be life altering. But these are that's why I said it was an important time, I think, Pete, for the team, for him to have this go smoothly with the two of them in lockstep as to how to attack it.
And I think that it will, Tom. I think that their interests are so aligned. The organization, Bills, and Max, they're all pretty much pointed in the same direction, right? They made a commitment to Max. It looks like he's going to be the guy here long term, and I don't think it's in anyone's interest to risk something in the near term to risk putting him back out on the field a week or two early I think the bigger picture is that he's going to be here a while, and they want him to be as healthy and productive as he can be when he goes out to play. And so I really don't think that this is going to be one of those things where the player and the team are on wildly different pages. I think that they'll support Mac in whatever he decides to do, and I think Mac will understand that they'd like to see him go back and play whenever it is that he's ready, and hopefully that's sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and that'll be. I mean, I think Bill, obviously 70 years old, he's dealt with scads of situations that are more tenuous than a sprained ankle, but his bedside manner will be evaluated, I would imagine, by the Mac Jones camp. And smart as he is, I'm sure that he will be of whatever he needs. I mean, the last thing we want to do is put him in harm's way. I mean, it's a good opportunity for him to rebuild goodwill, I would think, if Mac's sitting there going, what the hell do we do with the coaching staff? That's just an observation, not a question.
Yeah, I think that there's obviously a lot to talk about with the Pats and the NFL in general, but I think your larger point that it's a sprained ankle is kind of the bigger one, right? Like we're kind of making a lot out of nothing here. It's not ideal to have your starting quarterback out. Nobody knows exactly how long it's going to be. Right now, it probably would be a shock if he practiced tomorrow. So he's probably going to miss a little bit of time, but it also wouldn't be a shock if he was back in a couple of weeks, depending on what it is. So I think take a deep breath, see how it plays out. I think they know how to handle a sprained ankle.
Pivot now to the backup, because almost certainly Brian Hoyer will be under center at Lambeau, just given the pain that it appeared Mac was in. How do things change when a backup, especially specifically a trusted backup like a Brian Hoyer, comes in, who might have some physical limitations, but you still feel comfortable about the brain inside that ball dome of his?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. So we were just talking about the need to push the ball down the field in this day and age, right? And that might be the one thing that they decide that they have to pull back on. Typically, when the backup plays, the old saying, we're gonna run the ball, play good defense and special teams, and try to win a close game. And I don't know how much the formula has really changed. Despite, again, our previous conversation about wanting to push the ball down the field. So I would imagine the offense will get a little bit more conservative, not that they've been wide open to begin with. And it seems like everybody has a great deal of confidence in Brian's ability to operate the offense. And so probably come in and be the, quote unquote game manager, try not to do things that puts the defense in a bad spot, and hope to play a clean enough game and get a couple of breaks and win.
What's the responsibility of an offensive lineman and a team leader who is not the quarterback when a backup comes in? What's the tenor that you accept and kind of extend to the rest of the offense?
Yeah, I think you have to be maybe even a little more patient than normal. Understand that the plan may be a little bit more conservative. That the results may not be always what you would hope for. With that being said, whether the backup's in there or it's Tom Brady, it doesn't really matter. Your job's pretty hard to begin with. Those guys on the other side are pretty good, and the job description doesn't really change. You got to block them. It doesn't matter who's behind you. And so, if there comes a point in time, and probably Brian doesn't need help in identifying protections and fronts, but if the other guy is happen to play or whatever, then yeah, a guy like David may have to take a little bit more on his plate as far as helping identify fronts and get things lined up. But I think with Brian, it'll probably be closer to business as usual for the guys up front, and just understanding that, there's a reason he's the second guy and not the first guy. And everybody else on the team will just, take it upon themselves, I think, to try to do just a tick more, play a cleaner game. And again, feel like Brian's going to be able to do enough for them to win the game.
All right. That's our guy, Pete Kendall, checking in. Always appreciate your time and insight. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you soon.
My pleasure, Tom. Yes, we'll see you soon.
My guy. All right, out with Pete Kendall, in with Phil Perry. Phil, we used your rant from early edition at the top of the show because it was so good. I ask you, misgivings aside, are you encouraged, ankle aside, at the direction of the Patriots offense through these first 3 weeks and the strides that they've made in trying to install the chuck and duck offense?
I think you can say that you're encouraged based on the point total, right? They put up 26. They probably should have put up close to 30 against the Ravens. And we can talk about whether or not the Ravens are actually a good barometer for success defensively these days because of the numbers that they have allowed through 3 weeks this season. To me, though, Tom, there is some bigger picture types of issues where I would sort of just tap the brakes on anyone getting overly excited. It's great that they started to finally figure out a way to become more explosive. And I just looked at some of the numbers. Mac Jones is actually leading the league right now in yards on deep passes. So passes that travel 20 yards or more down the field. Nobody has more passing yards. That's good. That's a good thing. That leads to good offense. Explosive plays are good. I asked Mac Jones about it yesterday. And I said, has there been more of an emphasis on some of those deep throws? And he said,
Well, let's
yes.
hear it.
Let's hear it.
Explosive plays are always good, and I think a lot of the really good teams in the NFL make explosive plays, and just being able to do that, and then also hold on to the ball and have a fine line between the two, I think is really important. So explosive plays are good plays, and we want more of those. So they're doing a good job giving me time, and the offensive line's done a great job all year. So obviously they're a big part of it. They might not show up on the stat sheet for the explosive play, but there's a lot of things that they're doing to create those as well. So shout out to those guys.
So I think he gets at the issue there, though, Tom, which is explosive plays, thumbs up, turnovers, thumbs down, because we want to be able to hold on to the football while still generating those explosive plays. And they're near the bottom of the league in turnover differential at -4 through 3 weeks. They have 2 interceptions on deep passes this year, which is second in the league. Mac Jones behind only Justin Fields when it comes to picks on deep throws. So, and he's hurt, Tom. That's the other thing. And he's been pressured pretty frequently relative to what the Patriots are used to over the course of the last 2 weeks, where his pressure rate's up over 30%. It only happened 6 times, 6 games all of last year where he was at those numbers. And in 4 of those, they didn't have their starting left tackle. So it's great to be explosive. I would say to what end? If you're creating more turnovers than you want and your quarterback's banged up after the last or 2 out of the last 3 weeks, is this the right path? That's why I would tap the brakes on some of the progress that we've seen, though some of it is good. And there are other elements of the offense, Tom, that I think have been good. But overall, there are, I think, still plenty of questions here.
But you've paid into this operation, and your point is great. Okay, well, he's got the highest passing yards on explosive throws down the field, but he's also injured, and we're 1-2. Is it working? Do we stick with it? These are the things that Bill Belichick, I'm sure, is discussing by himself, not backseat driving necessarily, as much as I'm trying to really just channel what he would be thinking. Okay, well, we're doing it. We tried to do it. We have done it. There's been completions. We've done the things that we set out to do. At what cost? So is it going to get better? Are we going to protect more? Our team's just going to look at this and go, you know what? He's trying to throw it 25 yards down the field. Just keep sending people. Because if he's off platform, his feet are not under him and he doesn't throw as well down the field. Or does Mac get better and better at that? It's going to be interesting to watch. And then, of course, now he's injured. But there will very much be, I think, an ebb and flow to their offensive personality that may ebb now that this has gone on, especially and continue on when Mac Jones comes back.
Well, and if you look at some of the trends, and again, it's 3 weeks. You could say it's a small sample size. But to your point of, well, how our defense is going to respond to this? Are they going to try to pressure him more? Are they going to throw more blitzes at him? Right now, again, according to the numbers, this is Pro Football Focus who compiles this. Mac Jones right now is the lowest rated starting quarterback in the league when facing the blitz. His quarterback rating is 32.3. Has 31 dropbacks against the blitz this year. He has a 48 completion percentage, no touchdowns, 3 picks. So that, to me, again, I would get back to the overall big picture scheme, new offense, new language discussion and say, are they prepared for those things?
Mm-hmm.
Do they have the right answers, or do they have the number of answers that you need, the breadth of quote unquote answers that you need as a quarterback to say, I know I'm being blitzed and I can go to either option A, option B, or option C in my own head, whether that's a screen game check or a quick game check or some sort of pass protection check that helps you take care of those things. And right now, based on the results, they don't have that. Tom, there are a couple of other things that I would look at and just say, are they consistently putting this offense in the best position to succeed, and Mac Jones specifically, and that are they generating him, whether it's separation or quote unquote free yards, with some of the plays that they're calling. They're last in play action percentage. Mac Jones has only thrown on 10% of his passes. Those have been play action passes. So that's last in the NFL right now, 10%. And then when it comes to, and by the way, he's pretty good when he does do it. So there would be evidence for the Patriots to maybe call more of those. He's 9th in the NFL in yards per attempt on play action passes. They've called a few RPOs. They called a handful of them in the Pittsburgh game, which I thought might lead to more because he was so open talking about it during the week with us about how much he likes him. He liked him at Alabama. He knows how to run him well. Some teams, maybe not so much. I'm not sure we saw any RPOs in week 3. And according to Pro Football Reference, they haven't completed a single RPO, true RPO pass all season, which is at the bottom of the league, obviously. So there are plenty of questions as to, are they doing enough to put him in good spots?
And this leads to the conversation, especially when you talk about the sample size that shows how much the Patriots have tried to go downfield and the blitz numbers against them and his numbers against the blitz. You're Bill Belichick. If you look at 2022 as a season in which you're going to be competing for the AFC Championship and a Lombardi Trophy, you say, well, we're not going to do that. But if you're not, and if you're preaching patience and you're trying to install a new offense with coaches that down deep in your heart, you know, are not really cut out to be your long-term offensive coordinators, maybe they are, but it's very much, everything is a test drive right now. So we've gone back and forth. I'm not trying to say, I told you, but it feels like a bridge year. I think he's going to keep on sampling. I mean, it's just so much evidence that Mac has given us by the statements that he's made that, no, we're just getting intel, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, and they're not going to fold their tent after 3 weeks. They're going to keep at it, in my estimation, once he comes back and once he's healthy and comfortable, because they're not, this is a gather information year, figure out who we're going to be in 2023 and 2024, the next 2 years of Mac's contract. We have a little bit more latitude with our cap space than we do at the moment. And hopefully our draft picks are better. And I feel like they're just going to keep doing what they're doing. And this is a gather information season.
So to me, the question is it a gather information season or is it a gather information month or month and a half, right? Bill Belichick told us, hey, we might not know what we have until October. And
but if you piss away a month and a half and you're to interrupt you really discourteously, if you piss away a month and a half and you're 2-7, well, then just keep gathering the information at that point because you're not making the playoffs.
Well, you might be right. But what I would say is it's all well and good to gather as much information as you can. If the plan was to just have it be a month of information gathering, which Bill Belichick has told us in the past, they do, right? It's an extension of the preseason. We're trying to figure out what we do well, what we don't do well. That's all well and good to treat the early season like the preseason, but unlike the preseason where you're not seeing blitzes, you're not seeing teams really unload everything that they have schematically on you week to week, these games do matter, and teams are treating these games as though they matter. And the other thing is, Tommy, your quarterback is at risk as this is all going on. So we can talk about it like it's almost like a practice, these first several games here. But the difference is between the joint practices and these games, or the preseason games and these games, is the looks that you're getting and the threat, the physical threat to your quarterback who is now injured. So great to be in the lab, but if your quarterback's now on the bench and he's not able to participate in the experiments, how much are you really gathering from those moments? And that's what I would look at. And I just, Tom, it's not all bad. You asked,
right.
Are you seeing progress? I think the run game has been excellent at times. Excellent. And good for them in terms of pivoting away from some of the wide zone stuff, which we've barely seen. But Ramondre Stevenson looks great. They're over 5 yards per carry the other day. Excellent. The scripts, you asking Bill Belichick about the script before the season started, it just was a tremendous reaction from him. But then for them in the early moments of these games to be as effective as they've been, that's a credit to the coaching staff. They deserve credit for that. And they've become explosive. Again, they're pushing the ball down the field. That generally leads to overall offensive success. But with all this other stuff going on that we've talked about, not to mention, Tom, some of the personnel questions. Where's Kendrick Bourne? Where are the tight ends? Why does it seem like you love these passes into the flat on third down or in the red zone? Or why does it feel like we're seeing sort of some tendencies week to week? What's up with the turnovers? Picks are one thing. Fumbles? We're just the receivers just can't hold on to the ball right now, whether it's Nelson Aguilar. Kendrick Bourne fumbled at the end of that game. He was lucky he picked it back up. These are things that are attention to detail issues, communication at the line of scrimmage with Devontae Parker, attention to detail issues that I think it is fair to look at the coaching staff and say, are they doing enough?
This will be an ongoing conversation. I think we've done a terrific job bringing us all the way to Tuesday. Through Tuesday, we're going to get deep on the Brian Hoyer conversation on Thursday with the next Patriots Talk podcast, where we'll talk to Matt Castle. I bet Castle's going to be just full on. Brian's going to be great. Great. I think
maybe he will be
pretty freaking good too.
All
right. I'm going to get you my early Brian Hoyer numbers for Sunday.
Okay.
21 for 34 for 266, 1 touchdown, 1 pick.
That's not bad.
Suck on that.
That's not bad. And the way the Packers are playing offensively right now, I know they just went up against a really good defense in Tampa, but they're not exactly lighting the world on fire, are they?
Not lighting the world on fire. All right. This was great. Pete Kendall, thank you. Phil Perry, thank you. John the Skull Crusher Henry, thank you. Lastly, for those of you folks who are watching on YouTube, this is what happened Tuesday morning in my house because I was too lazy. I wanted to get to work. And Bo always, when we come back from getting a coffee, we come in the front of the house, but he likes to walk all the way around the house and sniff at things and probably relieve himself and then come up the back stairs onto the porch and through the slider. And I didn't want to wait for him, and I didn't want to get up out of my chair because I wanted to do work. So I just left the screen open for him to come in. And he came in, and I didn't get up and close the screen. And this is what happened. For our audio listeners, it's a bird in the house. See you guys later in the week.